from the Adulting School, and tonight we have Jessica Smith with us. She is a career and wellness coach for 20-somethings, and her coaching philosophy is centered around this idea that every person is born with an internal voice of wisdom. She calls it your ness. When connected to your nest, you are guided to every right next step in your life. Your nest cultivates a special kind of confidence. It gives those who tap into it the ability to be bold, take risks, and express themselves freely. So Jessica helps people drop external expectations and go within to find out who they are so they can live life with more flow, confidence, and joy. Uh, and we're so excited to have Jessica here with us, and she's going to talk about how to rock your next interview. So bringing that nest to your interview, standing out, I'm sure. And I'm going to remove myself from the video and let you take it away. If I can get me out of here. Am I out? Okay.
Well, thanks, Katie, and I'm really stoked to be here. We're going to go over a lot, and I mean, Katie said it right. Bringing your nest forward and sharing your authentic self in interviews, I think, is really important, because a lot of the times with interviews, it can feel a little bit robotic, and maybe it can feel a little bit technical. So we're going to talk a lot about interviewing today. I've got a PowerPoint to show you. I've got some free career success guides to share with you, and I'm really stoked. So I'm sure we'll have some more people kind of coming in, but feel free to use the chat bar if you have any questions or anything. Katie will be helping me manage that, and I'll stop throughout the webinar and check that to make sure that I'm answering all of your questions. So feel free to interrupt me. You know, this is the Adulting School, but you know, we teach a little bit differently here, so we can have this be interactive, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Okay, with that, I will share my ultra cool PowerPoint that I created for you guys. And okie doke, I'll pull up the chat bar as well, just in case. Okay, so, oops, jumped the gun. Okay, so rock your next interview. Like Katie said, I'm Jessica Smith. My website's justnessrequired.com. The assembly goals for today, you know, we've got 3 main points that we're going to be going over, and I want you to walk away with these 3 things accomplished. So the first one is having a clear understanding of how to present your skills and experience in an interview. Secondly, feel confident applying to jobs and really putting yourself out there in what can sometimes feel like a big, bad job hunting world, kind of scary, you know, uncharted waters. The unknown is always something that's out there when you're job hunting. But after this webinar and assembly, you'll feel more comfortable really putting yourself out there, because you'll have the tools and strategies, which brings me into number 3, for expressing not only what you do, right, like the skills that you list on your resume, but also who you are. So expressing that ness, that authentic true self, and expressing who you are, how you show up for work, and the human behind some of the skills you have listed on your resume. And I think that's part of, you know, the art of answering. How can I showcase not only what I do, but who I am as a person, as an employee, as a coworker, as a manager? And so we'll go over some of those strategies today. Okie doke. So I like to always just kind of go over, you know, who am I? Who am I to talk about interviewing, right? So you got to know that I'm legit. So this is kind of a brief overview of why I know so much about interviewing. And by day, I'm a technical recruiter. I've hired hundreds of people, mainly in the engineering field. So primarily people that software engineers, mechanical engineers, drafters, designers, I mean, all sorts of technical people. But it's really, it comes down to, you know, if you can hire someone in a technical field, the skills and the strategies for helping them get hired, specifically around interviewing, are all the same. So That's what I do for my day job. And then by night, I'm a career coach, and I work with people one-on-one, helping them to really tap into what they want to do, what they like, and how they want to spend 40 plus hours a week. Because, you know, the truth of the matter is we spend a lot of time at work. So why not do something that we love? So whether you're currently working right now and maybe you interview people, you can take some of the tips that I share with you, or you can have these in your back pocket for when you are ready to move, or maybe you're looking for a new job right now. So, so regardless of your situation, I think you'll be able to take some tips from this assembly, especially in building a strong personal brand, because I think a lot of the times when we think about branding, we think about, you know, Coca-Cola or, you know, Nasty Gal, right? Or all of these brands that we see, but we as people have personal brands. And so we'll go over some of these strategies relate to that and how to build a strong personal brand so that you can create more opportunity and more exposure for yourself in the career world. And then finally, I host a weekly podcast show. It's one of my favorite things to do on earth. It's called Career Coaching with Jessness. This photo right here is the image on iTunes. So if you're looking for it on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, you can look for that. And I share all sorts of career advice. So I'd like to think that I know a lot about this topic, and I'm confident in sharing my strategies with you. Briefly, I do have the link here for the free career success guides. I'll be showing it later on, but I wanted just to let you know that I do have some free downloadable guides that you can use, and there's a wide range. There's 4 total, but we will be sending out a interview prep checklist here through the Adulting School for attending the webinar, which you'll also get. Okay. Okay, let's see. Next slide. Okay, so what I'll be going over is, you know, a couple different strategies for answering questions, and then we'll go over what exactly it goes into the art of answering a question. How do you know what skills to highlight? And then also some extra tips for being a rock star interviewer. So this first one here is really hopping into the elevator. And you're like, what is this elevator? But this strategy helps to answer the question. And I call it the infamous interview question because it seems that it's asked in every single interview, regardless of skill set or job or company, and it's the tell me about yourself question. And you know, I've thought about this a lot because I get a lot of questions from my clients about, you know, how do I answer this question? It's so broad. What are they looking for? What aren't they looking for? And so one of the things that I kind of reflected on when I was going through, gosh, why is this such a popular question to ask on an interview? And it's that it's easy. It's an easy one for the interviewer to ask. But it also, it being such a broad and open-ended question, it gives the interviewer a really clear understanding of what's important to you and what you find as impactful from your experience. So they'll look at how you answer this question, and that'll give them a whole lot of insight to what you find as important in your background. And the things that you share here can really, really put you at an advantage. And so hopping in the elevator is my strategy that I teach clients about keeping it clear and concise. And if you really take advantage of this question, and you really take advantage of being able to answer it effectively, I think you will by far stand out amongst the other candidates, because these kinds of broad questions, you got to prep for them. Anytime that there's a super broad question asked, you know, if it's not clear and concise, it's going to seem a bit rambly and kind of just lackadaisical. So you want to make sure that you have some clear strategies for answering this. So let's see. So there's 2 versions of creating an elevator speech. And that's why I say, let's hop in the elevator, because I want you to think of it as an elevator speech, regardless of if you're in sales or not. Thinking about it in an elevator as an elevator speech will help you keep it short and compact. So typically I have people create 2 elevator speeches. One is to help answer this question from a personal standpoint, and then 2 is more from a professional standpoint. And basically what that means is you want to, like from a personal standpoint, when you answer this question, you're going to be giving them background on how you got to where you are in that moment, sitting in front of that interviewer. And you can tell them about how you've made choices in your career path that has ultimately brought you to your conversation with them there. So you can talk about more personal things like what you learned along the way, what you learned in or how you chose a career path, how you chose a major at college, or maybe you went to a trade school or got a certificate. You know, you can explain the why behind the different choices that you've made. And then ultimately you can tie it back to, you know, I'm working at this position here at this company, but I'm really looking for XYZ, which is why I'm here with you, and I'm really excited to speak with you about it. So you can share the human behind some of the choices on your resume, and paint them a picture of why they're sitting in front of you right now. And then from a professional standpoint, you can really tell them more about the career progression. Here's why I left this job to then go there, because I was looking for more responsibility. I was looking to manage people. I was looking for more depth in my current role, right? You can talk about more of the tangible skills that you'd be developing and why you chose you know, each particular role. And then again, you can tie that back to why you're sitting in front of them there, right? And so it all goes back to a little bit about you, but then in that last kind of closing part to this answer of the question, you want to tie it back to why you're there in front of them. And I think when you answer this question and you rock it in a clear and concise manner, I think it only can really showcase who you are as a person, but you got to practice it. So I saw a little blinking light here. I didn't know what that meant. Oh, the chat function. Do I have an elevator speech? I do. And I actually, it's quite, I don't want to spend too much time on this question, but that's an excellent question. I put down here, what is going on? Okay, and it's over. Sorry about that. In a podcast episode that I did, number 52, I actually just did this recently. I go in depth with some of the strategies for how to answer this question a little bit more in depth than I did now. And I also give you my 2 examples of both my professional elevator speech and also my personal elevator speech at the very end of that episode. And, you know, when I was first doing that podcast, I was like, oh, it'll be a short, quick podcast. It ended up being quite long, actually, because explaining this in a tactical way to my audience is really important, because it's a big question. It's one that any person out there that's interviewing, they've gotten it at least a couple times. So if you want to hear my personal examples of both the personal elevator speech and professional elevator speech, you can go to podcast episode number 52. But that's awesome. I love it. Good question. Okay. So the next thing is okay. Okay, so the next thing is know your audience. So is this the next thing? Yeah, know your audience. So one of the big things that I get a lot is I'll ask people, okay, we're prepping for an interview. Who are you meeting with? And they'll say, oh, I don't know. I don't know who I'm meeting with. You know, this is so crucial to know your audience, know who you're interviewing with. And the reason why is that you can stalk them, and I'll get to that in 1 second. But if you don't know who you're going to be interviewing with, you know, I really encourage you to take a proactive step in asking. So a lot of the times people are working with recruiters or even the hiring manager. It's important for you to, even if they don't tell you who you're interviewing with, to reach out and really ask. And if you get their first and last name, that's fantastic, because we're going to stalk them. That's the next topic. And you're probably like, stalk them? What? Professionally stalk them. We're not going to their house. We're not going to be on their front lawn or anything, but we're going to look them up on LinkedIn. And there's a couple different ways for or reasons why this is important. And it's because when you look up your hiring managers on LinkedIn, and if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you need to get one. But there's a couple different reasons. So the first kind of bucket is the human connection. And you just never know. If you look them up on LinkedIn, you may have gone to the same college. You may have worked at the same previous company, right? You may have both lived in the same city at one point. So you're making that connection with what you have in common with them. And I've had it before where one of the people that have reviewed them or left them a recommendation was someone I previously worked with, which it's just, not only will this help you ease some of your nerves, right? For interviews, it can be a really nerve-wracking process, but you can also have that kind of in your back pocket for kind of warming up the interview. So it's really, really important to really make that human connection. And I've listed on here, schools or maybe hobbies or volunteer interests. You can see if you're in similar groups on LinkedIn. LinkedIn really is the only platform that has a whole lot of just information on someone. So might as well use it and professionally stalk them, right? And I think, it's one of those things that never underestimate the human connection, because that is, the feeling and the connection that we have with another person. That's what you remember. That's how you stand out amongst the crowd and the competitive job market. Does the interview look at you and go, I could work with this person? I could mentor this person, or I could see them making an impact on some of my other coworkers, or maybe my direct reports, right? And so don't underestimate the human connection. The other piece of this is, if you understand the background of who you're going to be interviewing with, you can help to interview. It helps with your interview prep. So for instance, if say one of the interviewers is a manager, right? You can look at some of the tasks that they are responsible for. You can look at what's important to them in the role that they're currently in. So you get kind of this inside sneak peek, right, that you wouldn't have gotten sitting down, and you can't really launch into interviewing them and saying, so what do you do here? It'll help to look at that beforehand, because it'll help you prep the right examples to share with that person. So it keeps you relevant, because what matters to the CEO isn't going to be the same as, say a recruiting manager. And I'm using a recruiting manager in an easy example for when I was going through interviews. And I'll give you an example. So a lot of the times, you have this resume, and you have a ton of different examples of different projects that you've ran, or projects you've been part of, initiatives that you've been helping with your department, all sorts of stuff. How do you decide what to share? Well, if you start with who you're going to be interviewing with, and you understand what their roles are, and at least, if anything, just their job titles, then you'll be able to pull out certain examples that you can keep in your mind for when you do speak with that person. So for example, this is a real example from when I interviewed, well, it's been over a year now, but for my current company as a technical recruiter, I interviewed with the recruiting manager and the CFO. So interviewing with the CFO was really scary. He's a super classy guy. He's put together. He even walks, just his whole stature and just vibe is very, very professional. I was literally sweating when I was meeting with him. But I did know before. It would have been extra scary if I didn't know that he was a CFO, if that was the first time meeting him, right? Shaking his hand, because all of that was going through my head. But because I had practiced, because I had looked him up before, I could keep in mind, okay, I know I have a general idea of what examples from my background I'm going to share with him, because I know what's important to him as a CFO. He cares about money. So in my examples that I shared with him, I prepared examples of when I helped save the company money, right? And I talked to him about how I was committed to eliminate some of the recruiting agency costs by using some of the strategies and recruiting techniques that I practiced at my agency recruiting position previously. And I was going to bring that into their environment and save them a lot of money, because then they wouldn't have to lean on all of these recruiting agencies, which, you know, recruiting agencies cost a ton of money. Usually they charge 20% of the person's salary. And if it's a high level engineer, I mean, that can, the fees can be up to $30,000 per person. So, you know, I talked about that. I said, here's how I'm going to use some of my tactics that I have in my repertoire, and I'm going to put them into action here and save you a bunch of money. And he liked that answer. He did. And if you know what people care about, you can focus on those parts of your background, and then you're speaking their language, right? You're connecting with them. You're giving them examples that they register. You're using their lingo, and that will just skyrocket your skills, and it will paint the picture for them in that this person's got it figured out. Even if I never spoke about kind of the details of how I call candidates or whatever, because that's not really important to him, right? When I was speaking with the recruiting manager, that's when I was talking about some of those more technical recruiting techniques, right? So that's kind of an example of how you can use the researching who you're going to be meeting with beforehand to start to pull out some examples from your background and know what to highlight with the people you're meeting with. Okay? All right. Take a drink of kombucha. All right, so the next leads into highlighting the right skills. So staying on this vein is, once you know who you're meeting with, you can pull out examples that are going to be relevant to them. The other piece is, how do I know what skills to highlight when it comes to the actual job, right? So this is a little bit more broad, and this is an example of how we're going to examine the job description. So there's a couple different things here, and I have my notes here too, because there's a lot of juicy stuff, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So essential functions. These are the technical stuff. And when I say technical, I mean tangible things like Word, Microsoft, using a computer, lifting 50 pounds, right? These are kind of the hands-on things. Responsibilities I have up here, the level of experience that the job is requiring, and then what skills are required to perform that job. And so you can list this out on a piece of paper and then look at the job description and pull out, okay, what is this job description saying about the responsibilities? What are they? What level of expertise? Is this a advanced position? Is this someone that has to have manager level experience? Is this someone that has 1 to 2 years, right? What is the level of experience that they're looking for? And I'm not just saying, oh, they're looking for 5 years experience, because, you got to read between the lines when you're examining some of these job descriptions, because a lot of the times it can be super broad, and sometimes it's like, well, okay, I'm just going to apply, but there are details that you can read between the lines and use that info to really highlight the right skills on your resume. So these 3 things, read between the lines. What's the skill required to perform the role? When they describe, hey, a great fit for this position would be XYZ, what skills are going to be listed? What skills are going to be needed to do XYZ? And so pull those out, right? And this is just looking at the job description. So you've got those listed out. The second piece that you're going to want to examine is competencies. So this is you as a person. Competencies are your knowledge. What knowledge is needed for this position that they're looking to hire? What are the non-physical skills? So these are some of the, hardworking, great attitude, resourcefulness, right? Those are some of those things. Additionally, we have abilities and talents. So the competencies are another big piece. Let me see what my notes say. I know I have some more stuff. Oh, I know what you're thinking too. You're like, wow, this seems like a lot of prep to do for just one job. And it seems like a lot of work to prepare for each job. If you're thinking about, if that comes to mind, you probably want to ask yourself if this is a job that you're interested in, right? If you're excited to do, if this is a job that is actually going to be worth your time. Because when you do this work here up front and you pull out this stuff and you really examine the job description, it gives you an opportunity to kind of slow down and just see, is this job even worth my time? Is this something that I want to be putting my effort, my energy into? Because I remember the job hunt, just that whole process. You come home from a full day of work, you basically looking for a new job is like having another full-time job. I get it. And so you really want to focus on those positions that are going to get you excited and get you to want to get online when you get home from work and apply, right? And so there's tons of jobs out there. Just make sure you're spending time on the right ones, and taking yourself through this activity will definitely help you decide whether or not, or showcase whether or not you're truly interested in that role. Okay. Okay, some other things that you want to look for are, the between the lines pieces of info are really going to be, of all of these things, can you find in that job description what the performance measurements, can you find out in that job descriptions what a successful person in that role looks like? And then once you pull out the essential functions and competencies that you can find in the description, those are the examples from your background and previous work experience that you're going to want to highlight. And we'll go over in the next slide how to answer and how to really showcase these skills. But, take these things in steps, because if you look at everything all at once, it's like, oh my God, I have to do that for every role. But if you look at it in steps, like, okay, who am I interviewing with? Let me look at the job description one more time and pull out these different things. Okay, of that list that I pulled out from the job description, those are what I'm going to focus on in putting together examples from my background. And those are the examples I'm going to share in my answers. Because if you can pull these things out of the job description, that is the answer to the test, right? That's what they're going to be asking you for. They're going to be asking you about previous times that you had similar responsibilities listed in the job description, right? They're going to ask you about the skills that you had to perform in a previous role. They're going to ask you about different competencies that make up how you get your work done, so that they can really understand if you're going to be a good fit for this job. So that's kind of a mini lesson on how to figure out what examples to pull out from your previous work. Okay, the art of answering. And I really, really nerd out about interviewing. I know it's strange, but there is an art to answering questions. And if you do it right, it feels literally so good. And I loved going through all of the interviews when I was going through my job hunt a little over a year ago, like I said. But, I applied to 30 places, and I just really, I basically was my own recruiter, right? I was Jessica, and then I was my I had my recruiter hat on, and I was recruiting for myself, but then also I was kind of my own career coach too. And I was able to apply a lot of these strategies and methods that I share with my clients on myself. And it was so rewarding and fun to see them in action from a place of me doing it. And so, the art of expressing who you are is really, that's what it comes down to. And if you can express who you are and how you get your work done with what skills that brings to the table, that is when it becomes really fun. So I applied to 30 places. I was invited to 17 phone screens of the 30 applications. Of the 17, I moved forward with 7 phone screens. Of the 7, I was invited back to all 7. I moved forward with 4. of the 4, I was invited back to all 4 on-sites. And then on-sites, I went to 2, and then I ended up with 2 offers. And when you can tackle an interview prep and really express yourself through your answers, because it's not a matter of whether or not you can do the job. Of course you can do the job. And it's not whether or not you're adequate enough for the job. Of course you are. But it really comes down to when they're assessing candidates and they're having people interview, who can express themselves and their skills the best. And that's, you got to sell yourself. You have to be your own best recruiter and represent yourself, just as I did. And when you do that, like the example I just shared from my job hunting experience, was the ball is in your court. You get the pick of the litter. And, there's something really fun about right now, because the unemployment rate is low. There are lots of jobs out there and not enough qualified people to apply for them. Why? Because they're all working, right? So it's very much in your court already. So when you apply some of these strategies and tips, it'll just be, you can just take the cake and you can choose out of all these jobs that you've applied for and you're moving through, which one's going to be a good fit. So that's like my little pump up spiel. And so let's jump into this. So you're probably familiar with the STAR method. We're not talking about the STAR method. We're talking about the JustNess method. And it's better, but I'm biased and I know it works. And so it's called the STAL. I tried to find a fun kind of acronym or whatever that's called. And STAL was like the only thing that came. But did I even write it out right? Anyway, we'll move through this. Okay, so the first part of STAL is the situation. This can be, so what you'll do, I guess I'll back up 1 second. I got too excited talking about just interviewing. But when you pull out that list of questions or those lists of competencies and essential functions of the role, this is how you're going to structure your past work examples, right? So you're gonna write out just in bullet points of that work example. You're gonna write this out, and I'll take you through it. Saw the chat function again. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I wrote Starl. Anyway, yeah, we'll just jump through this. So the S is situation. And this can be situation, a problem, or project. It can just be, something that you're going to have enough information and enough to that part. So the situation, let's use situation just to make it easier. So the situation has to have a beginning and an end. And if you choose a situation, problem, or project and you can't answer the rest of these, the JustNess method, then you're going to want to pick a different situation, problem, or project. So you want to have enough meat in that initial situation, project, or problem to take yourself through the rest of the bullet points. The next is task, right? So what tasks were involved in this project? I'm going to use projects right now. What tasks were there? What tasks were needed to be taken care of? And you're going to want to make sure that you use I's and we's, or not we, just I's, not we's. Because, I mean, a lot of the times there are projects that are group projects, or maybe it was a group initiative. That's all good, but just make sure to explain what your specific role within that project was. And you do that by showcasing, you saying I, and you have to pull out what your specific, every step that you were involved and responsible for was through each of these bullet points. Okay. The action, the specific action that you took within that project, and your approach. So I guess I left off action there. Your approach is a way that you can express how you work, not only what you did. So the task is more like, hey, what was needed, what was what was involved. The action was, okay, what action was taken? But the approach was, you can explain why you did what you did. You can showcase your thought process behind the approach. You can express maybe what people you involved, right? The approach, and you can showcase a little bit more behind the scenes of kind of like in your brain, right? You can let them into your brain, and that can only showcases who you are and how you get your work done. And it's not so, well, this was the situation, this was the task, action, and result. I think that's what happens with the STAR method, and it's very, very robotic, and you don't get to really share why you did what you did. And so sharing your approach can really showcase that part of it. And then the last piece, I don't know why I have L. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, so the R is result, and this is where you have to be super specific. Dates for deadlines, right? The metrics. What was the magnitude of the project? How long did it last, right? These need to be things that you can measure. So these are all quantitative pieces of info. And this will help to hone in on what exactly, the action that you took, what action that you specifically took, what did that look like? What did success look like after that? And then the L is learned. And this is another way to incorporate some of the how and who you are behind the what you did. And this is telling them, hey, this is what I would do differently next time. This is how I would apply that moving forward. If there's something maybe that you changed in process or people included, this can showcase, some of those competencies that maybe you pull out from the job description, like your resourcefulness or maybe your adaptability, right? And so, or maybe your proactiveness. So all of these, this way of answering questions can help put that essential functions that you pulled out from the job description with that competency piece, which are the non-physical skills, and marry the two. And when you answer questions in this fashion, you will answer it thoroughly, you'll cover everything, and they'll get the best of both worlds because they know how you got it done, but also the reasons behind it and some of the thought process, and you can share some of those competencies that you bring to work every day because you rock. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Okie doke. Any questions?
So that was awesome. And if anyone has questions, you can post them in the chat.
Oh, I'm not done though.
She's not done. Just checking in.
Yeah, a couple more tips, and then that's it.
Perfect. No, I was like, you wrote out Starl?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, like what? I'm like, what is that? So yeah, so it's I can maybe send out a follow-up with that correct order there. Hopefully that.
Well, I'm psyched about the stuff that they're getting for free too for registering that you're offering. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that will be really cool. So, okay, a couple more slides here, guys. So the next one is answer like a pro. So these are just some more tips on how to do that. And you'll want to focus on, the first one here is when you're putting these examples together, you need to focus on past work examples, things that you've already done, because this is going to provide interviewers really a concrete platform, and it's going to validate the experience that you have listed on your resume. And it helps to eliminate answering in kind of hypothetical, or this is what I would do, or this is how I would handle that, or this is how I envision that going, or this project moving forward. If you say, here's what I did here, this is a time where I did X, Y, Z. And so it'll really back up with some concrete data on how you did some of those responsibilities, or carried out some of those responsibilities, and how you really showcase those skills at a previous job. And this will help you stand out, of course, because it automatically puts you in the seat of the role that you're interviewing for, right? And so the people that are listening to you answer these questions can really paint a realistic picture of, I can almost see her in the seat now because she's prepared relevant work experience, examples that fit the job description, and also I'm the CFO and she's giving me examples about how she's going to save me money. Like, hired, done. So these are some extra pro tips that you can kind of walk through to prepare for. Okay. Oh, are we paused? Okay. Other tips for rockin'. So these are a couple just to keep in mind. There's no shame in clarifying any question that you're asked. So if you're confused, rather than launching into your answer, you can absolutely clarify the question. I think a lot of the times people automatically are like, well, they're the ones interviewing me, so I can't ask them any follow-up questions. But absolutely, if you are unclear, or if they're not asking the question, in a way that makes sense, please, ask them. And it's okay to ask them to clarify what they're looking for, because the worst thing is you go off on a tangent of, answering something that they're not really even asking. And the people that you're interviewing with, they're not interview experts. They haven't even been trained on interviews, and so they're doing the best they can. So help them if you're unclear, and ask them a follow-up question. The other tip for rockin' your next interview is take the water. And that sounds a bit strange, but if they offer you water, take it, because taking a sip in between questions helps you to slow down and just take a pause, which helps you to give a little bit more time to think about your answer. But it also will slow your pace, right? So that you can just have a clear mind as you're walking through it, and you can help yourself just calmly recall some of the prep that you did beforehand. The third tip for rockin' is know your tone. So smile while you're talking, act excited. There are so many times that, and hopefully you don't have to act excited, right? But and it's a genuine excitement. But there's so many times, and it's really, really frustrating as a recruiter to hear this as feedback, but people go, yeah, they just didn't seem that excited. They didn't seem that interested in the position. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, we've been recruiting for this position for months. The person is perfect on a technical standpoint, and really that's the feedback. They just weren't enthusiastic. So unless, you can't assume that those interviewers that are asking you questions know that you want the job. You can't assume that they're like, well, she's here interviewing for this position, she must really want it. You take that off the table. Show them that you're interested. Highlight why, explain to them, here's why I'm here. These are my skill sets. This is my example of my previous work. And this is why it fits to this job. And this is why it's a fit, and why I'm here. Because it brings me to my next point here, is that it's a two-way street. Your time is worth just as much as theirs. And I think, it's getting into that mindset of really, you get to decide at the end of the day if it's a good fit for you too. And so you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So it's okay to, sell yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable selling yourself or excited about selling yourself to the job, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in that maybe it's not the right job for you, right? And so don't waste your time on positions that you're not going to be super stoked on and super excited about. That, if you do get, once you get to that final round and they offer you the position, is it an immediate yes? Is it a hell yes in you? If it is, then okay, continue on. If it's not, don't waste your time, because there are a ton of jobs out there, and you want to spend your time on the ones that you're excited for. The third, or this next step, clear your mind, is it's a good one, because I think a lot of the times, and I experienced this too in my interviewing and when I was applying for jobs, is, everyone everyone feels they've got, the best opinion. It's almost like, whoa, where'd all these people come out of? Everyone's got an opinion on what job's the best, or what the commute is going to be like for you, or whatever. It's really important to clear your mind of all of the other opinions that may be coming into your life, or people sharing, or people telling you what to do, or giving you advice, and also stay grounded in what you truly want, and stay grounded in what that next career move looks like for you, and what that next job looks like, including what's important to you. And so you can clear your mind a number of different ways. I think I have a podcast on this as well. But journaling is really huge for me. Brain dumping, just get up and just write it all down and light that thing on fire. It feels so good to do. You can meditate, you can work out, you can do yoga. Find that activity. Maybe it's drawing. I've been drawing a lot lately, actually, but focus in on how you can stay grounded in what you truly want, and help to clear your mind. And it brings me to my next point, and so that you can focus on what you want to happen. And there's a podcast show, number 9, that I did fairly recently, or fairly early on in the podcast. And it's just unspoken tips for career success. And these are the tips that the Career Center will never tell you, because they're a little bit, woo-woo, I guess. This is real stuff, but Career Center can't tell you to meditate, or maybe they are now, but the Career Center is going to say, get your resume up to date, when a lot of the times career centers are outdated themselves. I really think that a career center should be leaning on someone like me, where I can come in and talk to the students and all that. But that's a really great show, podcast show number 9, if you want to hear about some of those tips. And just focusing on what you want to happen. Because the other thing, and I'll touch on this briefly, is that when you're interviewing, aside from all the mental clutter that can be happening, it can be a tough road, right? You may be getting a lot of no's. You may be getting a lot of negative feedback just from the no's, right? It can be kind of a tough situation if you're going through and it's tiring, and you're coming home from work. And so all of that is going to play a role on your sanity. So I want you to stay sane. But you want to focus on landing that next job. You want to focus your energy there, rather than, gosh, I got another decline, or I haven't got feedback from them, or haven't heard from this job opportunity, and focus on the ideal situation. So like I said, listen to number 9 if you want to hear more about that. Okay, that's it. So any thoughts or questions, any aha moments, feel free to share. I've got my career success guides, the link to that, up on the screen right now. There's 4 career success guides for you for free, that when you sign up to that, any new career success guides that I create from here on out, I'll be sending to you for signing up with that. So that's a really good resource. And then, of course, you can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. So there's no excuse for not checking it out. No, but honestly, I create these episodes each week on the podcast to really give you insight and a behind the scenes look into, a recruiter's seat, and how to land that next career and next step, and whether it looks like a promotion or a new job, or just advancing your career and building your skill sets, that there's a topic for everything. Okay, I'll check the chat bar, see if we have any questions here. Oh, thanks, Kitty. And then, here's my contact details. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to say what's up, I'd love to hear from you. If you ever have a topic that you want me to cover on the podcast, I always take recommendations. And I just want to thank Katie and Rachel for having me. This has been so fun. I appreciate it.
I'm coming back. Hi. Thanks for being on, Jessica. That was incredible. It was such good information. You have giveaways for everyone. We couldn't ask for anything more. So thank you all for everyone who was a viewer this evening. And if you've registered and if you are a member in the adulting school, you'll have access to the recording. So we're excited to get this out to everyone so that they can rock their next interview, obviously. So I think we're going to wrap it up. If anyone has any last questions, you have the option to chat. If you look at the bottom of your screen and scroll over it, there are all kinds of options that pop up. Chat pops up. Any last questions for Jessica or myself about the adulting school before we close down this webinar? Everyone's all set.
Okay, great.
So yeah, thank you so much again. We're going to sign off, and we hope to catch everyone on the next Adulting School webinar. And please check out Jessica Smith at the website that she provided, justnessrequired.com/love-my-job. And her podcast sounds amazing. So you've been doing it for a little while because you were like, check out episode 38 and number 4 and 50. Like,
I
so
know it's a lot of my voice on there.
How often do you put out a podcast?
Weekly. Yep.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Thanks.
It's a lot of work, but good information.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to sign off.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.